This weekend for LSU football. Sam Spiegelman covers recruiting nationally for Rivals and Yahoo Sports. Good enough to give us a little bit of time here on this Friday. Joins us on the Jim's Firearms Hotline. Sam, how are you?
I can't complain, hon. How's it going on your end?
It's going quite well. Let's talk. I want big picture first before we start talking about LSU's Junior Day. We know that the transfer portal is all the rage these days, and Brian Kelly was one of the coaches who was very, very open with the fact that they were going to build this program from the high school ranks and rely a little bit on the portal. And somewhere over the course of the last 8 months, his tune has changed, and LSU obviously went really hard in the transfer portal after the 2024 season. As far as high school recruiting goes with juniors, is it still the frenzy that it always was, or have you seen some programs kind of cool on 16 and 17-year-olds?
No, I think to your point, it's a more big picture effort with these college football front offices, if you will. Brian Kelly is following a similar trajectory as, Ryan Day this time a couple of months ago when they decided to bulk up their transfer portal budget, go out and get some of the best players in the country, including the quarterback they just won a national championship with, Caleb Downs on the defensive side of the ball. And yeah, Ohio State competes for national recruiting titles every single year. They're in the mix with the top 5 or so class year in and year out, and that's the way that LSU is currently modeling their efforts. LSU has continued to recruit at an extremely high level. That we know. They just signed a top 10 class in 2025, and the state is loaded with talent for 2026, 2027, 2028, and beyond. And LSU is always at its best when they recruit their home state, which they're on track to do really well in 2026. Of course, to compete in this national landscape, you need to be doing both at a really high clip. And what we're seeing BK and the Tigers do this offseason shows that they're in it to win it. And they got a product that should be in the mix for a playoff spot next year if these evaluations go correctly.
Let's talk about that loaded state that you were talking about in 2026. A couple of guys in the state, Jamar Brown and Blaine Bradford, are expected on campus this weekend. So tell us about those two guys as prospects and how you feel LSU sits with those two.
Yeah, let's start with Blaine. Blaine Bradford is the number one safety on Rivals. He's pretty consensus top safety in the country no matter where you look. He's a Rivals 5-star. He's from right there at Baton Rouge Catholic. He missed the majority of his sophomore season due to injury, and he came back in the state championship game, had a game-breaking interception, nearly returned it to the house, and then as a junior was absolutely stellar. This camp season, he worked out at Bama, Ohio State, LSU. At 6'2", 205 pounds, clocked a 4.40. He actually almost picked off Bryce Underwood during the 7-on-7 portion of LSU's camp. At this point, he is probably the most coveted safety in the country. We know his older brother Jacob signed with LSU in December. LSU is going to be in it until the end with the state's top safety. Oregon and Ohio State aren't going anywhere. Alabama is also in the mix here. But really, Ohio State in particular and Oregon, with getting him on campus for the first time earlier this month, have both made this one a little bit more interesting. And then Lamar Brown is the number one interior offensive lineman in the country. He actually was meeting with Brian Kelly earlier today, who was at U-High. Lamar Brown has been an early LSU lean for the early portion of his recruitment, but as his junior year came to focus, we saw the Aggies kind of chipping away, and they got him on campus, I think it's 6 times since June, and they're scheduled to get him on campus 2 more times before an official visit. LSU has a little bit of catch-up to play with Lamar Brown. I think they're not only recruiting him to play on the offensive line, but he's maybe even more open to playing defense. So Bo Davis, Blake Baker have been getting involved. They'll get him on for a junior day visit this weekend. They'll try to secure an OV. We know that A&M, Alabama, Oregon, and Tennessee are all in the mix to host Lamar this summer.
Very, very interesting that A&M could come into to U-High and make some significant inroads there. That's not something that I had on my old proverbial bingo card there, but here we are, I guess. Speaking of some other folks that are expected on campus here in the class of 2026, some LSU commitments, Aiden Hall as well as Kenny Darby, a couple of guys from inside the state. What can you tell us about those two?
Yeah, Kenny just led the state in receiving this past season for Airline High School over there in Shreveport. He got his offer from LSU at the back end of the season. Wasted no time committing to Cortez Hankton, Joe Sloan, and those guys. And Darby's been a regular visitor since getting that offer. Even before, it was it was one of those situations where that was the offer he was waiting for and didn't waste time jumping on it. But everyone else caught wind after he committed. Texas A&M threw an offer. Tennessee, Alabama, schools across the country have been trying to catch Kenny's attention, but he was scheduled to go to Alabama last weekend. Instead, Coach Sloan, Coach Kelly showed up at Airline High School. He shut his recruitment down. He'll be back in BR this weekend. That's a really good sign for the like I said, this really talented 2026 class. Aiden Hall from Edna Carr, a part of this early 2026 class, committed this summer with teammate Big Rich Anderson. We know Edna Carr were the state champions this year. A lot of schools across the country still have a lot of interest in Aiden Hall. He picked up an offer from Auburn today. We know that Ole Miss has been in his recruitment for a while. Oregon really likes Aiden Hall. Getting him back on campus is just another huge step for LSU, holding on to this prize commitment out of the state of Louisiana. We know they'd love to pair him with Blaine Bradford. That would potentially give LSU two of the top 5 safeties in the country right from their backyard. They're going to have to hold on for the rest of this roller coaster, but Aiden Hall hasn't visited anywhere else, despite a lot of schools coming through Carr trying to get him to.
I'm curious, as far as commitments go. In this world of NIL, and I realize that revenue sharing is coming, so maybe it doesn't matter as much, but are you seeing less early commitments from juniors, whether early in their school year or later in their school year? Because once you do that, you may kind of shut off the bidding war a little bit. Do you find that are players that are waiting a little bit longer?
Actually, quite the opposite.
Really?
Because you're seeing kids commit early. They find the school that they think is the best fit. They lock in their spot and they try to shut things down, even if they want to shut things down. You have this period where coaches are on the road. You have the spring when coaches are back on the road during spring practice coming by the high school. And then you have official visits that, coaches are saying, why don't you just at least come visit here, take a look at us before you sign on the dotted line and make sure that, X school is where you want to be. And sometimes the school will say, go out and see what else is out there and make sure that this is where you want to be too, because we haven't even touched on the element of the transfer portal. And, we've seen kids be on campus for days before hitting the portal. So we live in a very, unique time in terms of college football athletics and the way that transactions goes. So you might you still get plenty of early commitments, and once in a while, I would say they stick. But we're seeing a more common approach where we're seeing probably 2 commitments for a high-profile kid in the 4- and 5-star range. Not everyone, but there are a good chunk of kids that'll make an early decision. Then they will basically go through a second turn of this process through these summertime official visits. And then, of course, you have always the in-state pushes for schools like LSU, like Auburn and Alabama, like Texas and Texas A&M across the SEC, where if there's someone who has a breakout senior year, the home state is going to try to their best to try to keep them in state, even if they're a little bit late. We've seen it at LSU. We've seen it all over the country. So there's different phases of these recruiting processes. Trust me.
Yeah, that in-state kid that blows up happens every single year. You never know exactly where it's going to come from, but certainly in Louisiana, that's somebody that's always going to pop up late in the process. Sam Spiegelman's our guest, national recruiting analyst for Rivals. Elijah Haven has gotten a lot of attention, as he should, in South Louisiana, and there was news earlier this week that he signed an NIL deal with a car dealer based out of New Orleans. What do you think about the recruitment of Elijah Haven? We got a long way to go, as he's just a sophomore at the Dunham School here in Baton Rouge, but how big do you think this has a potential to get?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be. I don't want to say it's going to be to the same magnitude as Arch Manning, but much like Arch, you're talking about not only the number 1 quarterback in the country being from South Louisiana, but potentially just the number 1 overall player in the class. Elijah was absolutely fantastic his first year at Dunham, just being the best player on the field, each and every Friday night, and then we saw him just take a massive leap forward as a sophomore. I think he already holds every single record over there at the Dunham School. not only did they play for a state championship, he put up, I think, over 500 total yards, gave them an absolute chance to win down to the fourth quarter. At that position, the high level development that he's showing, the character of the kid, and I think that the way that his recruitment is drawing the eyes of coaches from these powerhouses across the country. He's been at Michigan, he's been at Texas A&M, he's been at Alabama, he's been at LSU. This is, I don't see this being a very dramatic recruitment by any means. We know that Derek Stingley went through the Dunham School and had a very tempered recruitment. It was, pretty standard. I kind of expect the same approach. Neil Weiner is still the coach over there, and he has things done a certain way. And the way that the Havens go about business is very, very mature, a very smart, diligent approach. So I think he could be someone who commits early. I think he'll explore his options. I think LSU is not only very much involved. I think that they're the early team to beat, but Louisiana has 3 really talented quarterbacks in its backyard this year, for 2027 rather. 2 of them hold offers, and the third is the little brother of the starting quarterback, Colton Nussmeier, out of Dallas. So it's going to be an interesting roller coaster for Joe Sloan and BK to handle, but right now they're in a good spot with the number 1 guy on their board.
He's Sam Spiegelman. You can find him at Rivals. He's a national recruiting analyst for them. If you're looking for LSU Junior Day updates throughout the weekend, you can certainly find them from our guy, Sam Spiegelman. Thanks, man. Have a great weekend.